Has the universe ever sent you a sign while you were at your lowest? The night I was sitting in my car outside the recruiting station ready to quit the army before I even enlisted, a homeless veteran knocked on my window and spent an hour telling me why military service saved his life, not knowing I was about to walk away from the biggest opportunity I'd ever had. This happened in 2008 when I was 19 and completely lost. I'd been working dead-end jobs since high school, living paycheck to paycheck, and watching all my friends either go to college or start careers while I went nowhere. My girlfriend had just broken up with me, saying I had no direction or ambition. I'd visited the Army recruiter 3 times but kept getting cold feet about signing the papers. The night before my final appointment, I was sitting in the parking lot of the recruiting station at 9 p.m., staring at the enlistment contract on my passenger seat. I was terrified about leaving everything I knew, going through basic training, and potentially deploying to Iraq or Afghanistan. All the what-ifs were running through my head. What if I couldn't handle military discipline? What if I got killed overseas? What if I was making a huge mistake? I'd pretty much decided to tear up the contract and go home when this older guy approached my car. He was clearly homeless, worn out clothes, carrying everything in a backpack, but he had this dignity about him that caught my attention. He knocked on my window and asked if I had any spare change. When I rolled down the window to give him a few dollars, he noticed the Army paperwork on my seat and asked if I was thinking about enlisting. I told him I was supposed to sign tomorrow but was having second thoughts. That's when he asked if he could sit in my passenger seat for a few minutes and tell me something important. Against my better judgment, I said yes. The man's name was Robert, and he'd been a paratrooper in the 82nd Airborne during the 1990s. He explained that he'd fallen on hard times after leaving the military, struggled with drinking, lost jobs, ended up on the streets, but that his military service had been the best thing that ever happened to him. Robert told me that the Army had taught him discipline, given him skills, shown him the world, and most importantly, proved to himself that he could do hard things. He said that even though his life had gotten difficult later, he'd always known he was capable of overcoming challenges because of what he'd learned as a soldier. He looked at my enlistment papers and said, "Son, I can see you're scared, and that's normal, but I'm sitting here tonight because I want you to know that joining the Army won't solve all your problems, but it will give you the tools to solve them yourself." Robert spent the next hour sharing stories about military training, deployment experiences, and the brotherhood he'd found in the Army. He wasn't recruiting me or trying to convince me, he was just sharing what military service had meant in his life. When Robert got ready to leave, he shook my hand and said something I'll never forget. "I don't know why I felt like I needed to talk to you tonight, but I did. Sometimes the universe puts people in your path when you need them most." The next morning, I walked into that recruiting station and signed my enlistment contract. Basic training was exactly as hard as I'd feared, but every time I wanted to quit, I remembered Robert's words about doing hard things and proving what I was capable of. The Army changed my life completely. I got my college degree, learned leadership skills, deployed twice, and discovered strengths I never knew I had. Everything good in my adult life traces back to that decision to enlist. Sometimes the people who seem to have the least are the ones with the most important things to share.